Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and it's time once again for looking at some hero decks. Yes, we're going to be doing part 3 of our part 4 series, looking at our hero classes and their decks and how to play them and kind of how to synergize, do some basic deck building with them. And this week we're looking at the Shaman, Warlock and Warrior decks. We've already done the other six. The other six hero classes, all the way from the Paladin, the Hunter, the Mage, the Druid, the Rogue, all the others. We've got those 3 left. But like I said, this is a 4-part series, so the next video we're going to be looking at the neutral deck, or all the neutral cards, and kind of just looking at we're looking at basically each one of them and just how they fit into the hero classes and where they might work well, and so on. Just to give you an idea about what some of those neutral cards are like. And yeah, just I'm sure you guys have noticed there's a new logo screen with the Hearthstone Elite logo there as well. I'm now contributing to Hearthstone Elite, an awesome website that's got some great resources, a deck builder, all sorts of really cool tools, as well as news articles. And these videos that I've been doing, the deck building and future strategy videos as well, I'm going to be essentially doing a text-based transcription of the video in case you can't watch it, so that you can at least read about that discussion and, get the info anyway. So you don't have to piss your boss off at work if you want to read some Hearthstone stuff. You don't have to be sitting there watching a video to do it. Cool. Okay, so this let's get started then, I guess. And we are, like I said, going to be starting off with the Shaman. Yes, we're going to look at the Shaman, and now my screen has gone a bit funny on me, so just let me fix that quick. Okay. I think we're good. No, wait. Damn you. Come here. Okay, now we're good. Okay. So we're going to start looking at the Shaman deck. So let's pop in there and take a look. Okay. So off we go to look at the Shaman deck. Now, okay. So like the others, like the other videos, this discussion is not meant to be a in-depth discussion about building a specific deck for the hero class. It's about generally looking at each of the hero classes and getting an idea of kind of where its strengths and maybe even its weaknesses lie, so that you can better understand the types of decks you can build with it. And then you can go off by yourself and start putting something together, kind of based on what we looked at here, and to understand how these hero classes really are strong and what kind of stuff you can look doing with them. So, it also looks at the sort of design intent behind each of the hero classes, looking at its hero power as a guide as to what that design intent really is. Now, to start things right off, the Shaman is a bit of a tricky one. The design intent behind the Shaman is not immediately apparent when you look at its hero power. Why do I say that? Well, it summons a totem. What totem does it summon? Well, it summons one of 4 types. So there's no specific totem that it summons. Either it can be a healing totem that heals up your minions, which was nerfed recently, by the way, with the patch, because it used to be able to heal your hero as well. You can also summon a taunt totem, a 0/2 taunt. You can summon a I don't know what it's called. You can just summon a 1/1 totem to deal some damage, or you can summon a 0/2 spell damage totem. So it's random as well. You've got no control over that, except the only control you might have is if you've already got other totems out. You can't get 2 of the same totem. And if you have all 4 totems out, you can't get any more totems. It's not going to work. It doesn't do that. So, yeah, you can only have 1 of each totem type. But that doesn't really help us in understanding what the Shaman is good for. What we can see, though, if you do take a look at the Shaman deck with the totems in mind, you'll see you've got extra totems here as well. So obviously the Shaman deck is about totems, and that makes sense. If you played World of Warcraft, Shamans are all about their totems. So you see you do get 2 extra ones at least here, and in crafting mode there aren't anymore. Okay, so that's fine. You only get these 2 extra, and Totemic Might just buffs your totem's health. So there isn't a hell of a lot you can do with that. I mean, sure, you've got some totems, and you can maybe buff your totems to give them 2 attack, but that's not all that powerful. So the totems there are basically just as an add-on for all the other stuff the Shaman can do. In this case, the hero power is not a good indicator of its real design intent. The other thing, though, if you look at with the Shaman, is that it has this very specific mechanic that's unique to the class, and that's the overload mechanic. Oops, would help if I type that right. There we go. So what you can see if you take a look at the Shaman deck, with regard to overload, it has quite a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of overload stuff to look at. I mean, and if you're not aware of what overload really means, it means if you play a card that has an overload of 1, it means for the next turn you're going to have 1 less mana crystal to use. So it sounds kind of bad, but it can be really good in the right situations, and as long as it's not overused. And we'll get to that in a minute because that causes a problem. But again, if you take a look at these, for example, what's really awesome about some of these overload cards is if you take a look at Lava Burst, it deals 5 damage for 3 mana. There is no other spell in the game that deals that much damage for that lower mana cost. Nothing. Even the Mage's Fireball, which does 6 damage, is a 4 mana cost card. So you've got to pay 4 mana to get close to the 5 damage that this thing deals. Now, the problem, of course, as you can see, is that it has an overload of 2. Now, 2 overload is kind of high. It just means that next turn you don't have... If you play this on turn 3, you're going to have 2 mana next turn. Kind of rough. But that's just the way it happens to work. It also has one of the cheapest board clears in the game. This Lightning Storm is not the cheapest. Wait, it might actually be the cheapest. Yeah, I think it actually is. It's a weird one because it does 2, 2, 3, so it might do 2 or it might do 3 to a minion, but besides that, it is at least 2 damage to all enemy minions, but it has an overload of 2. Tricky. But the overload just means that you can get something really beefy and strong out quite cheap by sacrificing your mana for your next turn. Which it is a double-edged sword. I mean, you can even get a really beefy beast out. A 7-8. I mean, it's an overload of 3. But with that, you got some serious board control there, and it's a taunt, so your enemy can't ignore it even if they wanted to. And if we just look for any more overload stuff, yep, you got your Feral Spirits, which I don't have. I'm actually going to create 2 of these now. Why not? This is a fantastic card as well, the Feral Spirits. Very good taunts to have and very powerful. So imagine that you get 2, 2, 3 taunts out for 3 mana. That's ludicrously cheap. Except for the overload. Okay, let's move on and take a look. Okay, that's all the overload cards that are in the Shaman deck now. So, yeah, that overload is a very powerful feature if used correctly. And if we take a look, let me get out of crafting mode for a sec. If we take a look here as well, you get another card called the Unbound Elemental. Now, this is where things get a bit confusing, because if you look at this card, you obviously want to buff this as much as you can. And the only way to buff this is to play Overload a lot. But you don't want to play Overload a lot. So it's a very strange element to play with a Shaman. And the Overload is great for very unique situational purposes. But if you rely on this card, it means you're going to be playing Overload all of the time, which means you're always going to be low on mana compared to your opponent, which is not necessarily a good situation to be in. So yeah, this is a very tricky card to play with. Yeah, it's just it kind of doesn't make sense, because yeah, you want to buff the crap out of it, but you can't use Overload that much because it's bad for you, So yeah, Overload mechanic is an interesting one from the Shaman point of view. Now, with all this kind of uncertainty around the Shaman and exactly how it's played, I tend to think of the Shaman as kind of an intermediate level of play, not exactly an advanced level of play, because there are methods to build a deck from this that is not terribly difficult. It's not a piece of cake. The Shaman is not a good beginner deck, I don't think. But once you're comfortable with the game and kind of have the mechanics, down pat and gotten used to a lot of the cards, the Shaman is a good one to look at to, further your play styles and what have you. So if Overload is a once-off kind of situational type of mechanic, and totems aren't terribly reliable with their randomness and just supporting nature, what the hell is the Shaman good for? Well, if we look at another feature of the Wind Shaman, it's Wind Fury. Now here is where things get interesting. You can see immediately that there's a combination of Overload and Wind Fury mechanics. And if I just go to crafting mode to see, you can also see the hero, the legendary for the Shaman deck is Alakir the Windlord, which has Wind Fury. So Wind Fury is really where the Shaman deck's strength really lies. So if you consider how good Wind Fury is, and for those who don't know what Wind Fury is, it just means that the minion can attack twice. Or the weapon. So if the weapon's got Wind Fury, that means it can do 4 damage a turn. But what makes Wind Fury very useful is that it's flexible. Because if you've got, if you take a look at, say, the Doomhammer, let's just take a look at that one. It does 2 damage, okay, but it's got Wind Fury, which means it can do 4 damage. Now, why don't you just make it a 4 damage weapon? But it's actually better as a Wind Fury of 2 damage, because that means you can either do all 4 damage on one target, as if it was just a 4 damage weapon, or you can split the damage across multiple targets, which is fantastic. So if there are two health minions, you're not using all 4 damage on just one of them, you can actually pick both of them off. A very useful feature. And there are also neutrals in the Wind Fury section as well. You've got the Young Dragonhawk, the Raging Worgen, the Thrallmoth Farseer, and the Wind Fury Harpy. And these are actually all, except maybe the Dragonhawk, but you can still find use for it. All 4 of these are actually really good cards. And again, the Wind Fury just makes them fantastic, because now you've got, for example, the Wind Fury Harpy. It does 4 damage, and then it does 4 damage again. Great flexibility, and can do a crap ton of damage. But it doesn't end there, because let's go back to the Shaman deck here, and you can see, for example, the Shaman is the only class that can give Wind Fury to minions, which is fantastic. So you can even pick other minions, really big minions, either on the health side or on the attack side, and give them Wind Fury. You double their damage output and give them that Wind Fury flexibility. You even got a minion that can give Wind Fury to another minion. So now you can see the Wind Fury stuff actually is a pretty good thing to do with the Shaman deck. Combined with that, and it doesn't end there, combined with that, you've got all these totems. So remember, we've got totems that can heal. Now, the problem with Wind Fury is that it'll take damage twice, but you've got a healing totem that can heal your minions. You have, for example, other things like Ancestral Healing, again, to heal them up and give them a taunt. You've got, I'm trying to find that, Ancestral Spirits. So the great thing with this is you can use your Wind Fury to pick off a creature and then pick off another creature which kills it, and then it just comes back. Incredibly annoying. Imagine that if you're playing against that. Or you attack your opponent, kill off its minion, it dies, but it comes back immediately. I mean, that's an incredibly annoying thing to have to deal with. And one of the big ones is the Flame Tongue Totem. Imagine adding an extra 4 attack to each Wind Fury creature. If you've got 2 Wind Fury creatures sitting next to each other, drop the totem between them, they can each do 4 more damage. Absolutely kick ass. And another step further, if you look at the king of cards, of buff cards in the entire game, in my opinion, is Bloodlust. This card is monstrous, and really I'm very, very surprised it wasn't nerfed in the last patch. I honestly was expecting this card to be nerfed. It is a monstrous card, especially if you think about Wind Fury now. If you've got 1 Wind Fury creature, you're giving it an extra 6 attack. Bloodlust can win a game. You can be down to 5 health, your enemy can be on 30 health, and you can win a game on Bloodlust alone, as long as you've got the minions to back that up. And if you've got a lot of totems out, Bloodlust gives them 3 attack as well. And in fact, I've won games playing Shaman and I've only had totems out and use a Bloodlust, and bang, you kill off your enemy with the Bloodlust. It's an absolutely awesome card. Very surprised this wasn't nerfed, and it might actually still get nerfed in the near future, but we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah. So really, when you're looking at building the Shaman deck, you see these features about Wind Fury, about the totems that can support your creatures, and about the overload for really good situational type effects that you can do on the field. It has a lot of flexibility in that regard. The only thing is it can be very tricky to get used to playing and building the right deck around it. Like I said, this isn't necessarily about building a specific deck style, because there are other playstyles that work reasonably well on Shaman as well. For one, playing a Murloc deck with the Shaman works very well, only because of that Bloodlust again. The entire thing, if you get a ton of Murlocs out, they're all buffing each other in health and attack and all that stuff, and then you give them all +3 attack all over again, well, you know, GG, thank you for playing. Drop a Flame Tongue Totem between Murlocs. And you can even consider going as far as playing a minion-heavy deck, kind of like we, in our Paladins discussion, about putting lots of, you know, summoned creatures out, because of the fact that you've got things like this Flame Tongue, the Wind Fury, if you get some out, you can give them Wind Fury, things like that to buff them, and the Bloodlust, obviously, again. So there's a lot of possible ways to play this. Just at face value, the Wind Fury combined with the Overload and the Totem seems like a good combination. But yeah, Shaman, a great intermediate style deck, and maybe you guys can have fun with that. Okay, well, so we're going to take a look at the Warlock deck next. Now, the Warlock is one of those decks that I believe is actually a great beginner deck. It's actually a fantastic deck for a beginner to play with. And let's just start off then by taking a look at its hero power. Now, one of the strongest effects or what's the word I'm looking for? Abilities in the game, in most TCGs, in fact, is card draw. If you can get card draw out, that can almost on its own win you a game. Being able to have cards in your hand so that you can counter what your enemy's doing and push damage out to him almost at a whim and counter anything he's got is fantastic. And you need cards to do that. So the card draw is one of those really powerful mechanics in pretty much any TCG. And the Warlock obviously has that in spades. Its hero power is to draw a card for 2 damage. So, I mean, card draw is so powerful, that's why there had to be a downside. There had to be. I mean, 2 damage is actually, it's a very fair trade. To get a card for 2 damage, I'll pay that any day. It's really a good way to try and balance that. So, now we consider that Warlock has a lot of card draw possibilities in it. Well, that seems to point to the fact that minions is a great way to play a Warlock deck. Because if you can get lots of card draw, it means you can put a lot of minions onto the field relatively quickly. If your hand starts running dry of stuff, draw another card. And in fact, that is actually where a lot of the strength of Warlocks comes in. And let's take a look at the Warlock deck here, and if we just take a look, the other thing we can take a look at, for example, is the one thing that the Warlock has unique to itself, which is demons. And there's quite a lot of demons. I mean, if you just take a look here, you've got the Blood Imp, a Flame Imp, a Void Walker, a Succubus. Next page, we've got a Felguard, we've got a Void Terror, we've got a Pit Lord, we've got a Dread Infernal, and I've got one missing here. 2 missing, it's the Doom Guard and Lord Jaraxxus himself. One of the scariest legendaries in the game, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so if you look at that, that kind of, you know, points to another thing, is that the Warlock is very strong with demons, which makes sense. I mean, you know, again, if you played World of Warcraft, you'll know that Warlocks are all about the demons and self-sacrifice. So they've brought that real flavor of the Warlock into Hearthstone as well, and I've yet to actually see any other players out there really push sort of the demon strengths of the Warlock deck. Now, the big problem with the Warlock deck is that a lot of these demons have negative effects as well. It's similar to the Shaman in the Overload effect, where you're getting this really awesome card really cheaply and early on, but there's a negative side to it, that Overload in the Shaman deck. The Warlock deck's similar in its demons. You get this really awesome minion out really early that can do a ton of damage, but it does a little bad thing to you as well. And almost all of them are like that. If you look at, for example, this Flame Imp, a turn 1 card that is a 3/2. That is awesome, but it deals 2 damage to you. It's worth it, and that's kind of the point. It's like the overload mechanic. It's worth it. It does have that negative side, but it's kind of worth it to get 3/2 damage out on your first turn. Not too bad, actually. You look at the Succubus, for example. This just discards a random card out of your hand. Ugh. But a 4/3 on turn 2, that's nice. You know, it's all about if you're going to play a demon-oriented Warlock deck, then it starts becoming a bit more advanced and cerebral to play. You kind of have to figure things out. If I lose that specific card, am I screwed? Because it's possible. It can happen. Let's look at some of the others. Here we got the Felguard. It destroys one of your mana crystals. Damn. Imagine on turn 3 you drop this. That means turn 4 you still only got 3 mana. You know what I mean? It just puts you back 1 mana. And if you play against a Druid, which puts himself forward by 1 mana, things can start getting a bit dicey. But a 3/5 on turn 3... this one's a bit debatable in my opinion, but you can see what I mean. It's meant to give you really good stuff early on for a price. Void Terror. Now this is not debatable. This is an absolute kick-ass card. I don't care what you say. To turn one card into an absolutely kick-ass single card, basically by combining 2 other minions on either side of it, is absolutely awesome. I've seen Void Terrors turned into, 25, 30 beasts. Just absolutely mind-blowingly powerful card. But obviously the problem with one single massive card is that it can be polymorphed, it can be mind-controlled, there's many single targets, sap, you name it. So it's a tricky one. The Pit Lord, again, a 5/6 on turn 4, not bad at all, but it deals 5 damage to your hero. The Dread Infernal, deal 1 damage to all characters, so that one's debatable. If he's got a ton of minions and you've got none, drop this and they all suffer 1 damage. Okay, not too bad. So that's the basic with the idea of demons with the Warlock deck, and it's not just about the demons themselves. There are a lot of other cards that synergize well with them, like Sacrificial Pact. You need to restore health to your hero, which you're probably going to do in the Warlock deck, because you do hurt yourself a lot. You can just destroy one of the demons that you're not using, or is going to get killed off anyway. Shut up. That's going to get killed off anyway, and get some health back. Pretty nice. You look at Demon Fire, which buffs up a demon or kills a minion. So you've got a bit of a choice there, but you can buff up a demon. Great. It's a nice card for that. Sense Demons to pull some demons from your deck. And Bane of Doom. Now, the interesting thing with Bane of Doom is that it summons any random demon, whether it's in your deck or not. Any of these demons that you see here. So it could summon a Pit Lord or a Dread Infernal. Pretty nice. One thing to bear in mind, that when you have cards that summon creatures like this, their battle cries don't trigger. Battle cries are only when it's played from your hand. So, yeah. Okay. So that's the basic of the Warlock deck. The other things to consider with the Warlock deck is, like I said, because of its card draw nature, it's very good at minion heavy decks, kind of like a Paladin as well. It actually plays very well, and in fact what is very popular is the Murloc deck, the Warlock Murloc deck. Because the card draw, you're dropping a ton of very cheap Murlocs out very quickly, your hand empties out incredibly quickly, get another card, drop that out as well. It helps keep you with options as you're going. And especially with the board clears that you'll get from mages and priests and paladins and all of them, being able to get other stuff out when they've used their board clear, get more stuff out quickly, it's a pretty powerful feature to have. And on top of that, a Blood Imp with your Murlocs, because they're so low in health, and you're pretty sweet. I mean, that's stealth, not a problem. Okay, well that's the basic of the Warlock deck. It's synergy with things like the demons, with card draw and sort of minion heavy playstyles as well is pretty good. And yeah, it's actually not a bad beginner deck to play around with. The only thing to bear in mind is, because you're doing so much damage to yourself, you might want to look at some healing minions as well at some point. If you're testing it out and you see your health drops so damn quickly, you might just want to consider adding a couple of healing minions in just to help you out. Otherwise, yeah, quite a fun deck to play. So now we've covered the Shaman and the Warlock deck. Let's take a look at the Warrior deck. Now, Warrior is quite a technical class to play. It's an incredibly powerful class to play as well if you can play it right. So I would definitely say the Warrior's up there with the more advanced, sort of intermediate to advanced level of play. It can be relatively technical, and it's not one of these easy to understand classes. It's not like the Mage, where you can see that the hero power is sort of a 1 damage spell, therefore it's probably a spell heavy class, which it is. It's not like the Hunter, where you can see, oh, there's lots of beast buff decks, so it must be a great beast deck, which it is. The Warrior is a combination of a bunch of different sort of features that are kind of unique to itself. I mean, if you just look at the hero power for the Warrior class, you can see at least one part of that is the armor side of things. Armor plays a relatively big role combined with two other things, which we'll get to. But it's not what stands alone. Armor is not what is the Warrior's thing. You know, if we start taking a look if we look at armor for the Warrior deck, you can see it's not like there's a ton of stuff about armor. I mean, there's Shield Block, which just gives you more armor. Whoop-de-doo. There's Armor Smith, which gives you more armor when a minion takes damage. More about damage in a bit. There's Shield Slam. Now, this is the only thing that actually takes armor and does something with it besides protect you. And this deals 1 damage to minion for each armor you have. So if you have 5 armor, you'll deal 5 damage. Very simple card to understand. And if we look in crafting mode, I've got missing cards. So armor is a feature of the Warrior deck, but it's not an incredibly powerful one. There aren't that many cards that really make a lot of use of armor. I mean, 2/3 of their armor cards give you more armor. So armor is a thing, but not the thing. But what else is there? Okay. So looking through the Warrior deck, you'll also see there is a number of cards that deal with charge. And again, not a lot. There's only 3. You can either give a friendly minion charge, you can drop a minion that gives all your minions charge, or you have a charge minion. So really, only 2 of these cards are charge effects that affect your other cards. The one already has charge. I mean, it's just another charge creature. The advantage, though, is that if you look at the neutrals, there are a fair amount of creatures that work on charge. Okay. Why that's a good thing? Well, charge is actually a fantastic thing to have, only because it's kind of like I try to explain charge as, at a minimum, it's like having a spell. So, for example, if you look at this Korkron Elite, I can drop this minion onto the field and immediately hit for 4 damage. That's like casting a spell for 4 mana that does 4 damage. Not bad, except it's a slightly bit better than a spell that does 4 damage, because it doesn't necessarily get lost after use. If I deal 4 damage to a minion that only does 2 damage, I still have it on the field. That's the advantage of a minion. So, at its very basic value, it's like casting a spell for 4 damage, with the potential for it to hang around a bit longer and perhaps do more. Not bad. Pretty useful. The advantage, of course, of having stuff that can give charge, such as these 2 cards, is that you're not stuck with trying to build a deck with these other charged creatures. You can use any creature you like and give it charge, which is pretty damn useful. So let's just take a look at some basic 1-cost cards in the neutral section, and let's look for the highest damage 1-cost card we can find. I think it's a 2-cost, isn't it? 2. Okay, so you can pick a 2 damage card and give it charge. If we look in the 2 mana, you can now stuff your deck full of maybe this. No, they can't attack, but you know what I mean. You pick high damage cards in the different mana ranges, like the Knife Juggler here. Actually, is a 3 damage. That's not bad for 2 mana. 3 damage, 4 damage. I mean, there's a Milas Mana Storm. That's 4 damage. 3 damage is around about what the max you can get. So, yeah, you pick the highest damage card in the different mana costs, and you can end up giving them charge. So that's a pretty powerful feature to have. But like I said, if we look at the Warrior deck and all the charge stuff, there isn't a hell of a lot. So again, charge is great. It's a feature of the warrior deck, but it doesn't seem to be the feature of the warrior deck. Okay. So let's carry on looking a bit. Let's see if we can understand more about the warrior deck. And if you take a look around, you'll often see stuff to do with damage. Now, this is the unique feature of the warrior deck. It's still not the feature. I mean, you see a lot of cards here, but that's just because it's difficult to narrow it down in the search. But you look at things like, for example, Inner Rage. It deals 1 damage to a minion, and then it gives it 2 attack. So it deliberately damages one of your minions for it. Execute. Destroy a damaged enemy minion. Okay. So the enemy minion needs to have some damage to it before you can kill it off. You look at Battle Rage. This is a perfect example. And yeah, this is just after the patch where they've recently modified this. This used to let you draw a card for each damaged character, not friendly character. So at a minimum, you could get 2 cards because you might be damaged and your opponent would be damaged. So there's 2 cards. And also his minions that might be damaged. You get a card for every one of those. His weapon had less durability than its maximum. That's counted as a character. So this was incredibly powerful for card draw. So they've recently nerfed this a bit for damaged friendly characters. Okay, well, it's still useful. But again, it shows you that the warrior is at a bigger advantage with damaged minions. A very weird concept to kind of get your head around. So I mean, here, Rampage, buffing one of your minions that is damaged. So again, you can see the synergy here. You Inner Rage to cause 1 damage, you give it 2 attack, then you Rampage it to give it another 3, and so on. We look at Slam, for example, so you can slam an enemy or one of your minions. So you can even see here's a synergy. If you don't have a Inner Rage, then you can use the Slam to deal 2 damage, draw a card, then Rampage it, and so on. I mean, Armor Smith as well, like I said before, this one is great with the armor section, but whenever one of your friendly minion takes damage, you gain 1 armor. So you have this out, and you slam, and you Inner Rage, and you do all these things, and it's buffing your hero up with armor, which is great. There's just a ton of the synergy with damaged minions. Frothing Berserker is an absolutely monstrous one of those as well. Whenever any minion takes damage against 1 attack. It's pretty nice, that. So, the thing is, again, there wasn't a hell of a lot of cards there. It wasn't like an overwhelming number of things that deal with damaged minions to make that the feature of the warrior deck. So, the thing is here, let's combine all 3. Okay, now let's combine all 3 and see what we get. So, we can already see that the Armor Smith combines 2 of those features, the armor and the damage. Great stuff. You have something like that Corcron Elite. Oh. Come on. Elite, Corcron Elite, it's got 3 health. Okay, that could get damaged because you do your first charge, it gets damaged. Then you buff it. Okay, that can work. You put out. You put out a Warsong Commander. Then you drop a bunch of creatures. They all charge and take some damage. Okay, next turn you buff them up, and now they can go out and do more damage. You can already see how the warrior deck is built around this idea of doing a lot of damage really quickly, taking out enemy minions with your own minions mostly, so that you can benefit off of that damage mechanic. And even the board clear. Oops, there goes my mic. Even the board clear that exists for the warrior deck, if we look at no, back here. The board clear that exists is the Whirlwind, which deals 1 damage to all minions, including your own. Again, if you need to damage a minion so that you can do extra stuff to it, you can use Whirlwind and potentially kill off a bunch of his stuff at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of the damage stuff that the warrior deck is good with. Finally, the last thing to talk about is weapons. The warrior deck is definitely one of those classes that does very, very well with weapons. You can see the Fiery War Axe is actually a fantastic card, a 3/2 weapon. Not a bad weapon to have. And I'm just going to crafting mode to make sure you see all of them. Okay. Okay, and just to reiterate, if you look at the legendary for the warrior deck, you can see it's got charge and an enrage. You know, and that's the other thing. With enrage, that's something, well, Gorehell, there's another weapon. So with enrage, that is one of the things that you can do very successfully with the warrior deck. Oh, damn, if I can spell it right. Enraged creatures work incredibly well with the warrior deck. And imagine that. You, in a... hang on. Come on. Where are you now? Yeah, in a rage. I just forgot its name there for a second. I mean, imagine you can take this Raging Worgen and hit it with Inner Rage so that you give it a +2, and then it gets Wind Fury and another +1. Damn. It's a pretty powerful way to build this deck off of enraged creatures. Plus, you put the charge out, so now they're enraged, they can charge. Oh my god, you can do some serious damage incredibly quickly with these things. I also make sure I've got... yeah, I mean, you've got Amani Berserker, also not a bad enrage. If you've got this one also can work incredibly well if you've got a weapon, enrage this guy, and give your weapon an extra 2 attack. Yeah, there's some pretty good synergy here with dealing with working with enraged creatures. Now that is just ridiculous. Sorry, I don't understand why the Angry Chickens are rare. It's just a silly card. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah. So the enraged feature synergizes incredibly well with the warrior deck. It's pretty damn cool. Why are you flashing at me? Oh, because I'm in crafting mode. Okay. Yeah. So that's the basic of the warrior deck, and like I said, it tends to be a bit technical to work with, only because it's mostly a combination of all 3 of these features. Not one of those features kind of really stands out on its own as the sort of design intent behind the warrior. It's a big combination of, you know, working with damaged minions and buffing them, armoring yourself up, and the charge. So combine those 3 together in a good deck, with some non-charged creatures that have a lot of attack. Probably the enraged creatures is a good idea. Dealing some damage to them and buffing them up, and just completely, you know, annihilating your opponent with all these creatures that you now have. Yeah, can be pretty fun to play. It's a very powerful, very aggressive style of play. They can just pummel your opponent's minions and your hero, your opponent's hero down very quickly. Oh, damn throat. Alrighty. So, I think that's going to cover it for these 3 decks, guys. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me for this episode. As usual, if you have any comments or questions, pop them down below. I do read all the comments I get. I need more of them, please. If you like the video, hit like, because that helps you know, increase my popularity, and you know, more people come to watch and stuff. It's always a good thing. If you want some notifications about when I might put new videos out, you can take a look at Hearthstone Elite, the site I was talking about before. Great resource for checking out you know, information about Hearthstone and so on, and the text version of these videos, and as well news articles and all that good stuff. Follow me on Google+. I've got a Google+ page for my channel, or on Twitter at HearthstonerZA. God, I'm in South Africa. Makes sense. Alrighty, well, thanks so much, guys, and see you next time. Ciao.